So, good afternoon everyone. My name's Domanic Day. I work at IBM. I've been working as an IBM apprentice in Z for just over 3 years now. I work in technical pre-sales, so I'm a client technical specialist is my official title. And the idea of this presentation today is to talk about the history of the mainframe, how it's affected the culture today, and then how it's going to affect the future and the people in the future, and who's going to be driving that forward. So I'm going to do a little bit of a presentation, got a few slides prepared, and then around halfway through the session, I'm going to stop, break out into groups, and just do individual discussions, and I'll describe that a bit later. So, history of the mainframe. So, 1944 was actually the first general purpose built computer by IBM, and then it was sort of followed on in the 1950s by transistors beginning to replace vacuum tubes. And then in 1964, the System 360 was announced, which was one of the biggest risks by any company ever taken. We bet the whole future of IBM into the System 360 being a success. And that was actually the first instance of the mainframe. And we gathered over 100,000 people all across the world to come and see this announcement about this new mainframe. And in the early 2000s, we actually rebranded the mainframe as Z, which is where the modern mainframe was born. Does anyone know what Z stands for in Z Systems, by the way?
Zero delta.
Correct. Also, just a little historical fact, we actually helped men land on the moon. Mainframe is one of the driving technologies that helped to do that, and a little known fact is actually that the Apollo guidance computer, which is the computer that they used to actually land on the moon for Apollo 11, had less technology in the computer than a modern toaster. So that just goes to show how far we've come since then. So I do have some references in popular culture as well. So this is how the history of the mainframe has actually affected popular culture today. Right, looks like we've got no audio, so we'll leave that for now. We've actually got 2 different movies named after the mainframe as well. We had a few songs, but I'll play those later on when we're doing the group exercises. So does anyone know who this man is?
I'm not answering everything.
That's correct. So Richard Stallman actually founded the GNU project, which has now become the open source movement. So the open source movement, he actually invented that when he had a problem with his printer in the late 1980s. He tried to fix it. The source code was proprietary. He wasn't able to do that. He decided all source code needs to be open to allow people to have access to it, to change it as they need it. This has now become the foundation for Linux operating system being developed, and this is where Linux 1 was actually born. So Linux 1 is IBM mainframe, except with a difference, it only runs Linux workloads. And it's opened the door to many different technologies. So we can now run on mainframe and MariaDB, MongoDB, PostgreSQL, Chef, Juju, OpenStack, loads of different open source technologies that might not have been possible on a traditional mainframe. We've also been doing a lot of projects around blockchain as well, and that runs really well on Z. And one of the projects that we've been doing with blockchain is the plastic bank. So, has anyone ever heard of the plastic bank, by the way? So the plastic bank is a company that were founded not too long ago, and it's more of a movement actually, and the idea behind it is to eradicate the plastic in the oceans. There's a couple of facts about plastic in the oceans at the minute actually. So scientists are predicting that there's going to be more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050. And every minute, the equivalent of 1 garbage truck of plastic waste enters our oceans, which is a total of 8 million metric tons a year. So this is a problem that really needed to be sorted out. So the company have actually developed a technology that allows people in less economically developed countries to collect points or currency on their phone or any other device by collecting plastic from an ocean local to them, taking it to a bank, and they can then use those tokens to buy food, supplies, life-saving things. And this is just a great project that we're doing at the minute with blockchain. One of the recent focuses with the new mainframes has been security. So obviously security has always been a focus, but in particular we've really gone for this one with something called pervasive encryption. So why are we focusing on security? So nearly 4 million records are stolen per day, and that's 2,263 per minute. 9 billion records are breached, only 4% were encrypted. The average cost of downtime for companies is an estimated $1.5 million per hour. That's why we've developed this technology called pervasive encryption. Pervasive encryption actually allows companies to encrypt all of the data in flight without any effect to their applications and at no extra cost. Alongside pervasive encryption, we have a technology called secure service container. So secure service container is essentially a dedicated form of LPAR, essentially, that encrypts all the data inside of it and works alongside pervasive encryption to create an unbelievably secure environment. That actually means the new Z14 is one of the highest, most secure platforms on the planet. Got another video there that we'll have to skip over, unfortunately. One of the other focus areas is machine learning. So machine learning identifies patterns in historical data, builds behavioural models from the patterns, makes recommendations, and it can then be used to improve doctors' patient diagnosis. So this is actually saving lives. With ZOS, we can now run machine learning on that, and in fact there's a focus on improving the technology on the platform at the moment. So this is a video actually I can't play again, unfortunately, but the IBM lab in Hersley has actually developed an application that allows you to converse with an Alexa device using only your voice to call your bank, find out your bank balance, other things, you know, transfer money, and that's where we see the future of banking. We're also looking to modernise the mainframe as well, and one of the ways we're hoping to do that is with multi-factor authentication. There's a lot of discussion about that at the moment, and how it provides new ways to access and new ways of securing the mainframe with Face ID, Touch ID, retinal scanning, and other things. So I've spoken about how the future of the mainframe could work. So how could we actually influence people, and who are the people that are going to be doing that? So we work a lot with Sheffield University, Manchester Metropolitan University, University of Wolverhampton, as well as many other universities. And in particular, we're developing schemes with our clients and universities that are educating young people in the mainframe. And one example in particular is the degree apprenticeship scheme that one of our clients is now running at Manchester Metropolitan University, that allows students to work 3 or 4 days in the office, hands-on experience with Z, and then one or 2 days they'll be working at the university, gaining their degree. We also run the Master the Mainframe project, which is developing enterprise computing and coding skills at more than 3,000 schools in over 120 countries. So that's another way that we're developing the skills for the future. Has anyone seen the video of the boy who bought a mainframe and had it in his house? Right, I thought that was really interesting anyway. So it goes to show that the people of our generation still do have a passion for Z systems, because there was a young boy who actually bought a mainframe, installed it into his basement, ran up his parents' electricity bill to ridiculous amounts, and now he's actually earned himself a job at IBM from doing that. We've also now got a Twitter account as well, so if anyone's interested in tweeting to us, that'd be great. We also tweet around GSE, and this is my Twitter account. I'm actually going to be starting a series of podcasts for young people in Z. I'm looking for volunteers at the moment, so if anyone's interested in that, that'd be great. Right, that's all from me for now. But the next part of the session is going to be a group session. So I'm going to split you up into, I think, 4 different groups. And I want you to answer 3 sort of different questions, or come up with 3 different answers to how can we modernise the mainframe, how can we get more people involved, how do we get young people interested, that sort of thing. So if I split you up starting from... And the idea of this session now is to sort of open the discussion up for the room. We'll have one person presenting, we can fire questions back and forth, just open the discussion really. So who'd like to kick off? Right.
So the first 4 ideas was sort of continuation of modernising user interface and interface. So maybe something like having ISPF be a completely menu-driven application. So something like you see on Windows, point and click, which would be ideal for young people to get involved in the mainframe because that's what they're used to growing up with Windows machines or Macintosh machines. And we had awareness and access of mainframe in schools and colleges. Would be very useful because it's very hard to access a mainframe if you aren't connected to a company or IBM in some way. And there are some examples we can Z PDTs, again that cost money. So the idea of maybe having like an IBM sponsored sort of emulation thing so anyone could get access to a form of ZOS on their machine would be really useful, no cost, just to get involved and see how everything works. So it seemed to be quite a big barrier for entry. And then lastly we had sort of continuous integration with open source. Open source technologies are really good in the fact that everyone can get involved in the actual source code and seeing how everything pulls together, as opposed to you buy a product and you have no idea what's under it, you just use it. As well as that increased training for core skill sets, it's like kicks, ZOS internals, DB2, IMS, and sort of incorporating those in colleges and schools.
Yeah, I think that's great. Particularly the idea around ISPF would be a great one. And then one of the things that I'm actually doing in my job at the minute is actually going out to schools and colleges to promote the idea of mainframe, the value. Because although high school students may, and college students as well, may understand that they can use the card at any ATM, but they don't actually understand the technology behind it. So it's presenting that, making sure they're more aware, and maybe then make the career choice and move into the mainframe in the future. So has anyone got any questions or comments about this piece? Okay.
It's got to be led by employers and employees, the whole outreach to schools. It's good a few companies doing it, but then everyone's got to sort of get involved in that whole recruitment of the next generation.
Exactly, yeah. It's a cultural thing, we need everyone to take part, yeah. Okay, so next group.
Modernisation in part, we've seen at this conference, convergence of modern interfaces, which is what Tom alluded to there, making it easier to access the mainframe and be able to pick up on what's going on in the IT industry, agile, DevOps, etc. Future, again, we discussed looking at the connectivity of mobile and smart devices, Internet of Things, making it relevant, I suppose. Mainframes have got to have a relevance in the modern world and showing that it has a place in the modern world. The guys here, probably we're the ones that are realising that it has. We've now got to try and feed that back to those that make the decisions that it has a relevance in our modern world. I think what was more interesting for us was for how do we get young people involved and seeing how different companies are doing it. So a very large learning curve initially. Is there a way of reducing the learning curve so we can get people in with the skills that they have at the moment, interacting with the mainframes, being useful in their role, with the skill sets that they have, without having to go through the massive learning curve of becoming fully au fait with the internals of IBM. That can come, but how do we get people fast track through? And I think, which was something that was very interesting for me, is we can give a voice. A lot of our decisions are made from people who have been there 30 odd years, and their viewpoints are 30 years old. What we don't have so much is a voice from the people like Tom and Callum who just joined our business and seek their viewpoints, because those of our sort of age and the people who are making the decisions are looking at the future of mainframes. They're seeing it as a legacy, not as an asset. We need to give people that are going to be there for many more years to come a voice on how we move forward with our IT estate.
Exactly, yeah. I think the point about the learning curve is something that resonated with me. From experience, I know that when I first joined IBM, I had no idea what the mainframe was, I'm ashamed to say. I should have known, but I didn't. And I had to learn everything from scratch, basically. And if there was a way, or even a framework of where you learn this for this month, that month, I think that would be helpful. If it's like a generic framework for all young mainframers. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me on that one. Anyone got any comments?
I think sometimes businesses think it's the best thing is sort of like a rotational system. Sometimes that works for some learners, it doesn't work for others. I myself have to like really get stuck into something to fully understand it. I don't like a little bit of this and a little bit of that because I end up not knowing anything really. So yeah, I think you've got to listen to your learners, and this is what we were saying when we were all discussing is at Barclays specifically, we were the first year, a few of us in the room were the first year to go through the degree scheme, and they've actually got us in to give our feedback and help guide and shape this year's intake. So it was our opinion that, and our sort of things that we liked, things that we didn't, that helped shape the training. The fundamental stuff they need to learn won't really change, even if we say, oh, we don't like, you know, TSO or whatever, they've got to learn that. But the way that it's being taught, or how long the training sessions were, even just like length of time. So for example, let's not sit in a room for 4 hours, let's break it up or whatever.
Yeah, I think a lot of the content's just online courses sat at a computer for hours and hours a day. I think maybe changing that as well would be helpful for young people, yeah.
Just like listening to their wants and needs, and next year it won't be us that give that insight, it'll be them, because we can't, you know, got to keep it fresh.
Yeah, exactly. Any questions or comments? Okay, no, we'll move on to this group then.
Okay, well, we discussed Zoe in a bit of depth with regards to modernisation, obviously involving then opening up the mainframe to allow access via APIs, to create a more user-friendly interface, and then obviously in itself giving people or users more choice in the way that they access the mainframe. Matt will probably expand a little bit more on Zoe because he obviously knows a bit more about it.
Yeah, so I've done a great deal about it. I attended the sessions. So from what I gather, it's sponsored by IBMC and Rocket, and essentially what they're looking to do is, you know, take ZOS tasking, writing JCL, going to STSF, things like that, and taking it into an environment where somebody who might not be familiar with 103270 would, you know, feel more comfortable, such as Visual Studio, Atom, other such text editors, that kind of thing. That then gets put back on the mainframe, and it means it's less daunting to get people familiar with the backbone of the mainframe without having to worry about, oh my god, where is everything, how do I get to everything?
In terms of the future, sort of saying that really, I think it's a good idea to get people when they're young, talking about 16-year-olds possibly, or even getting into schools. Apprenticeships, I think, are a really good thing. Young people start them at about 16 and join companies, and then they can get a degree while they're studying and they're learning for those 3-4 years where they perhaps would have been at university doing a degree that may or may not be relevant to the job that they end up doing. It's obviously more hands-on. They get a real feel of what it's, you know, they're actually doing the job as opposed to just, you know, doing theory and all the rest of it. And obviously once they join when they're 16, they normally will have a mentor that perhaps has maybe 20 years, 30 years experience, and they can pick up a lot of knowledge from that person. And that's what it's all about, passing on the knowledge to a younger generation.
Young people.
Young people.
Something we have very little of.
So the way forward, we said, yeah, is embrace modern technology. Don't be scared of it, basically, because obviously mainframes, to a degree, JCL, whatever it is, job language, COBOL, can be quite daunting for people. Again, try and get into local schools, you know, get the big company, because it's in their interest as well for IBM to go out to the schools. It's a recruiting ground in a way. that's going to be the future for in terms of your employees or all the other companies as well. And we also talked about Z trials. It's not something I know too much about, but Kieran here can hopefully expand on.
Yeah, I went to a presentation yesterday on it, and it's basically IBM developed it as a way to like show customers like their like products and let them trial them, but it's kind of coming now towards the point where anyone can sign up to it. It's free, and you basically sign. It's a bit like AWS, so you just fire up a ZOS instance. You've got access to whatever you want on it, and then after 3 days it just disappears. So I think that's quite a good way to get kind of people access to a mainframe easily. I think one of the main blockers is if you want to learn mainframe and you're not already employed by a mainframe kind of company, there's not really any way to do it. So that seems like quite a good platform to be able to do it and get used to it.
Yeah, so I think obviously the point around Zoe is a fantastic initiative, but a point that was repeated from earlier as well about having conversations with younger school children, college students, because a lot of students will go to university, they'll do 3 years in computer science, they'll come out and they'll go into a mainframe role, and it's a completely new world to them. And if we approached schools and colleges, gave them the idea of going into mainframe in the first place, they could do one of these new schemes that we're doing with lots of different clients about mainframe degree apprentices. And I think that was a great point. And then around the Z trials, also that's a fantastic technology as well. If anyone's interested in that, just let me know. Any other questions or comments?
Just that we could do a much better job as a mainframe community of being less deliberately obtuse with the way we make it difficult to even begin using it. You fire up a Z trial machine, somebody who's never seen ISPF before or CP command line will have no idea what to do about it. And even just from the IBM side, we need to perhaps take a bit of a step back and think about when we create something new or when we continue with things, with products and features that we already use, how can we make this more learnable, more interesting, and more intuitive for people? We were supposed to do that a bit when we partnered with Apple to try to make our products and usage more intuitive, and that'll help bring new people in too.
That was why I was interested in giving people a voice, because there's probably people here who was using computers before the x86 architecture came in. Then we had DOS, all command line based. Windows came along many years later. So when some of us go onto ISPF and doing it all on the command line, that's second nature to us. We've had 30 odd years of using command line interface. We don't then think of it as a problem. Why we need the voice coming in and saying, this is okay, but it would be really much better if we could do this, and this would interest us more, and we could then work more effectively.
So I think from my point of view, sometimes I'll be asked to do something with the mainframe on ISPF, and the person that's asking me has got 30 years experience, as you mentioned, and they'll expect me to know exactly what they're talking about straight away.
It's not necessarily the knowledge of ISPF, the fact that everything was command line based when a lot of us started. So the fact that we go from one command line based interface, SPCs, high next, then DOS, then mainframe, it's just one command line interface to another. Nowadays it's going from one GUI to another. People are using that, but for us going to using a command line based interface, it's what we're used to. So it doesn't bother us.
Yeah, I think we grow up with GUI interfaces now for this generation.
Yeah.
I think that's another good point about ISPF being a GUI as well, and like modernising ISPF. Yeah, some great points in there.
It's not just a matter of papering a nice GUI interface over what exists. It's a matter of taking the concepts that we use to implement our workloads and things like that, even down to data set allocation. Who knows what a cylinder is outside of our community? Who needs to know what a cylinder is to allocate a data set? Who should need to know what a cylinder is? Those are the questions we need to be asking.
Yeah,
But that's a fair point, isn't it? If you go onto any other system, you allocate a file, you don't have to start saying what the record length's going to be, what this space allocation needs to be, all the rest of it. It does it.
There's a kind of contrast to that, like you've got to be careful you don't go too far. Do you want everyone to be kind of brought up on a GUI and have no idea how to log onto a 3270 and actually fix something if anything goes wrong. So I think you've got to have balance. And I think what we said in our discussion was that you need the choice. You need to know how to do both. And it might be that the GUI is a good way in, but at some point you're going to have to make that jump and understand like what goes on in the background.
I think my idea behind it was always if we were able to start off with an ISPF GUI, we'd understand the fundamentals, how things worked, and then learn how to use ISPF command line interface and really understand how it works properly behind the scenes. I think that might be easier transition for a lot of people.
It's also interesting one of the main things that we find with Mainframe is the way how IBM charges. One thing that we are constantly looking at is MLC usage and cost. And so Zoe came along, it was great, it was really good. Asked one question afterwards, what's the CPU usage like? He said, well, actually currently I'm rewriting it because we've done it on a few clients and the CPU has gone. And they said, and as soon as we go back to our class, they say, we've got this lovely front end, it'd be really useful for not only people who've been on the team for a long time, but really for new people coming in. But the trouble is, it's going to spike our CPU through the roof. I know it's early days for Zoe, but it's something that's got to be considered. So if we're looking at modernisation of Mainframe, we've got to consider not just the interface, but what's its impact going to be on the hardware, the usage, the charging, the things that are going to make a difference, not to us as users of the mainframes, but to the people that we are accountable to, the business, who have to pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Just conscious of time, so I'll try to end that discussion there. Move on to this group.
Yeah, we won't be long. We pretty much talked around all the areas everyone else has talked about. Keep me right. I think we sort of pointed out IBM could probably do a better job in this space of modernisation. You guys need to be going out there. 3 days Ed trial doesn't really cut it, does it? It's not long enough. So if I'm at home trying to learn about mainframes, what can I do? A 3-day trial, really? That's all I've got. So learning about the operating system is a big deal. It's different to everything else, and that's what makes the mainframe. It's not just it's Z for zero downtime. So IBM getting involved in that sort of piece and pushing it out there a bit more, explaining what it is. The schools and colleges stuff that you're doing already is important, but the kids are not going to know anything about it until you start pushing it hard, until I can download it on my desktop and try it out. I think we talked about the idea of GUIs and things like that, and that's interesting stuff, and Zoe as well. But you've got to counter that against, well, the mainframe is a different platform, and what happens if something goes wrong and you're using all these GUIs and you're not really aware of what's actually happening behind the scenes? And worse than that, if we get kids in and we've got old guys teaching them the wrong ways to do things, then they'll just continue to do what the old guys did before. So they'll never see any of the GUI tools because the companies are just not embracing it. So it's like that lady said, you need to sort of get all the companies involved in this type of stuff as well. And IBM's in front of that as well, because IBM sells all the mainframe gear to all the companies. So it's in their contracts, for instance. I'm not saying that's a simple answer, but you need to engage with the companies that are taking mainframes and understand what they're doing with them. It can't just be about bottom line. With our companies, it's about bottom line, which is interesting. It's as fast as possible for the lowest cost. But there has to be more to it. We're never going to continue our guys working on the mainframe in this way. It's not sustainable. Anything else like this?
Yeah, pretty much covered. Yeah, I think we also discussed about the functionality in GUIs and how quite often if there isn't a function available in the GUI, you do have to go back to the command line. So you need the background training, you need to come through that learning at the same time. So someone mentioned earlier, you do need to know both sides because the GUIs are quite often functionally complete. Something else that occurred to me, I work in security, is one of the pillars of the platform is its integrity and its security, and a lot of that is through obscurity. People don't have access to the system, so they're not able to play with it and find the vulnerabilities. The system is secureable. It's not secure from day one.
and there are lots of ways that you can get onto the system. So if you have all these learning capabilities, then it makes it easier for people to figure out, as they've done with Windows and open source systems. So we have to be careful about unleashing these tools and make sure as professionals we do it in a secure way. And the other thing that we talked about was, this is one that I just thought of while we were discussing it. So we talk about getting into universities and schools and the curriculum. I saw a presentation where we're in 2 universities in the country, which needs to be every university. So we need to continue to push. Two's not enough. I know that China, Mainframe is on their curriculum in every university pretty much. And how many people are they going to be churning out in the next few years?
I think a lot of our conversation at the minute with customers has been around trying to work more closely with universities to train people up, to get people the skills that are sort of dying out a little bit, to be honest. I think a lot of the discussion points today have been really around education, and that's something that we'll take away from today, and particularly around the Zoe, GUIs, everything like that. That's all been great discussion points, so thank you everyone. Does everyone have any comments on the feedback from these guys?
Just kind of that maybe even our approach to the training and education needs to become a bit more modern as well. So it doesn't have to be the traditional classroom learning anymore. For example, myself and a few others in the room are on the degree scheme at Barclays, and we're being taught by MMU. But some of our lectures are done by WebEx with IBM people teaching us. For example, KICS is something new we're learning this year. We've been doing the red books as like homework, and we've had WebEx sessions with people from IBM. So universities just need to be open to maybe changing their approach to learning, but it won't come from themselves. Companies need to go in and talk with them and learn from best practices. So for example, the degree scheme, we were the first ones on the Mainframe one, but we've been in it now for a year, and there's new people doing it for a year. You can easily speak to them for their experiences and how they did it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll just be here next year and people will still say it's an issue.
The same problem, yeah. That was a good point, actually, yeah.
I was just going to say, you brought up that some things aren't available in the GUI and you have to go back to 3270. I think that's an issue, because if you then know 3270, you're pretty likely just to use 3270 because you can do stuff quicker than most of the time playing around the GUI.
Yeah, I think if there was a GUI developed, it would just be people just starting out, just trying to get used to it, and then maybe some people might have the preference then, if they've started out with it, to use it in the future and then use ISBF as a backup option. But yeah, so I think it would be useful for beginners. So has anyone got any other comments before we wrap up? Yeah.
We need to promote it in our firms as well. Even at the board level, we need to be promoting it up so that people are having the same conversations at all levels. So I can talk to my peers, but my boss's boss might not know anything about Mainframe. So it's incumbent on us as well to make sure that the whole of the company knows about it, and they're all talking to their peers about Z-Series as well.
And that again comes back to the point of educating people from a younger age, educating everyone from a younger age about what a mainframe is. Because if you've got the fundamental understanding of the value of the product, they'll understand when you guys go to them saying, listen, we need to update or whatever.
I think you've got to incentivise people to stay on the platform as well. So if you've got people at the top saying, we're not going to invest any money in training because we're basically just have applications run, people won't stay on the platform. People want to go where money spent. So you need to invest in the platform as well.
Yeah, and that's what my job is really. So I'll try and do a better job of that in the future. Any final comments before we wrap up? No? So, thanks everyone, it's been a great discussion, really appreciate it.